Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Kicking Tables. Today, we are delighted to welcome Andrew Prowse, the creator of Merchants of Infinity. Andrew, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, guys. It's lovely to be here.
Why don't we start off with giving you an opportunity to tell us what is Merchants of Infinity? Give us an overview of what your new game is.
All right. Well, if you imagine kind of like the whole genre of the merchant trading thing set in the Middle East, set in the Middle Ages, of kind of like a nice bearded guy with a hand gesturing towards some rupees on the side. Well, this is a bit different. This is going to be something original. So in this game, you basically play merchants on a fractal space station called Mandelbrot. And the idea is you go to the Techno Bazaar to collect different resources, fulfill ship orders, and you basically have a chance to maximize your profit every single turn. But it's a bit different from other kind of Euro resource management games because you're not stockpiling resources for turns on turns on turns. Every turn, it's kind of use it or lose it. So you can be sneaky, you can be crafty, you can be honest trading, you can take all the approach. So it's got kind of like the joy of sci-fi with a bit of steampunk thrown in.
That is very cool. I like that idea of not stockpiling. So you have to determine each turn what it is you're going to do that turn. And every turn it just resets. Is that the
Yeah,
idea?
the idea is a bit original. So the idea is because there's plenty of Euro games out there, but there's a few things that this game does that's kind of a bit unique to set it apart from the crowd. So.
Yeah. So this game actually, you boast on your website that this is it boasts several different elements, game mechanics, including worker placement, resource management, set collection, auctions, hand management, like so many things. How difficult was it, and how did you make a cohesive game out of all those different mechanics?
Well, the original idea was basically to create a game that my wife would love because I love all the kind of like the Ameritrash story playing, telling games like questing kind of things,
Mm-hmm.
and my wife's much more kind of resource management, strategy, less the theme, but more the kind of like the working out the best way of getting an advantage to win the game. So I've tried to create a game that had all those elements for her that she would love. So it's got the resource management, you're collecting resources. It's got worker placement as well, so you've got the tactical advantage. Um, and the original little game was absolutely tiny. I mean, you know Munchkin, basically.
Oh
Yeah.
yes.
This
Oh,
game,
yeah.
the original game fitted into a Munchkin box, just like fold little bits in there. And I kind of just made it bigger and better and bigger and better ever since. So it's been through about 2 or 3 years of playtesting, and I kind of like I'm overly creative, so I'm permanently like tweaking bits and changing bits and adding extra bits in. I think I've added 6 different expansion packs in for the Kickstarter. I've added 2 different extra elements of it. I've added an extra solo mode and all sorts. I just keep creating things.
Wow. So that gives us a bit of an idea of like what did the game look like when you first initially thought of it then, and like is it a completely different game now from when you first started?
Well, at its heart, it's still the same. I mean, as I said, I was kind of inspired by these merchant trader ideas. So I thought, well, what if it wasn't set in like a bazaar somewhere? What if it was set in a space station? So I actually went back to the original, the Grand Bazaar in Istanbul, and I plotted out on a map where all the different types of shops were, and I translated that to a space station. But I was really inspired by the idea of, fractal designs. So I looked at the really famous Mandelbrot series and thought, that looks like a space station. And the two ideas just came together.
Nice. Wow.
That's awesome. So are players focused on just their own plans, their own advancement, or is there some element of take that you use to block your opponents from advancing their plans?
Well, definitely different ways. I mean, in terms of the actual board itself, there's so many different spaces where you can go for action spaces. So in terms of the actual resources that are available, there's a number of different ones, but there's a limit to how many number of meeples can place there each turn. So there's a chance of blocking each other out or going for the best resources. In terms of how much each of the values is worth, the market value of the resources changes each turn. So that permanently means that your strategy's got to change. There are lots of different advantage spaces over here that can help you to give you like bonus to your rolls or extra cards or extra options or just more money. But this is an optional section over here. These are the player versus player spaces called the Nova spaces. So there's things there where you can basically steal an order of somebody else or take a cut of their profits or try to move them out of position. Obviously, not everyone likes to too much take that, so I wanted to put it in as an optional extra that people like playing that way. Then there's the opportunity there for them. If they're not the kind of gamers, then they can just play the nice version. And with obviously the idea of determining play order, there's a sort of a mini game called Cogs where you basically play cards, almost like poker style. to kind of determine the best hand, and then the best hand sets the turn order. So there's a little bit of take that in there as well, but only like charmingly so, should we say?
Well, let's talk about that for a minute. The mini game, the Cogs mini game that you use to actually determine first player for each round. What was the inspiration behind that, and how important is it to be first player each round?
Oh no, this has been great because I've sent the game out to about 9 or 10 different reviewers, and depending upon the kind of styles of game they play, some have gone like, well, it's not really important to go first, and others have gone, it is so important to go first. The idea of this is like, there are various different first player mechanics, like with rotating first player order, or if you think like 5 tribes, you've got the auction bidding, which is fine. But I thought, well, what can I put in that's something new, something a bit different? So I thought thematically, let's imagine like London Stock Exchange. It opens at a certain time and it closes at a certain time. But in like the minutes and hours before it opens, the traders all going to be kind of hanging around, shooting the breeze, trying to psych each other out to get an advantage. So I figured, what if they had their own little card game that they would play while they were waiting for the So you basically, you set up, you've got a hand of cards, and it's called cogs, obviously, because the steampunk element. And the idea that you're building a hand of different cogs, so you could have 1 cog or 2 cogs or 4, but there's also extra cards like remove another player's card, or, for example, zero out somebody's score, or double your result. So in that kind of way, you can go, well, I've got 3 points, 2 points, 0 points, double points. So it's just a bit of fun element to it, and that will set the player order. And it can be played sort of as sneaky as you like, or just kind of like a boom, 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 let's go, quick as you like.
So and are those cogs dealt out to each player every round? Or you get a different set every round?
Yeah, well, you start the game with basically 5 cards each to get a decent hand size going. You get another card for free every single turn, but you can buy extra ones to kind of give yourself a little bit of advantage. So again, it's the kind of, you're spending your profits to give yourself a turn advantage later on. So yeah, I think it's always a good idea to go first, because in some of the strategies that you've got, you might have a plan that means you absolutely have to have all 3 available spaces, or you want to get that bonus coupled with that bonus, coupled with that extra points. Because if you've worked out something to kind of rack the points up, you go, well, I've got this, double to that, add these bonuses, add that bonuses, then you have to go first.
Right.
Other times, right. Well, I've got nothing going on this particular turn, so I'll just grab resources and build something up for next turn, in which case, that case, it doesn't matter. So you'll have turns where it's essential or it's non-essential. You can play either way.
All right. So if you're seeing yourself, if you're playing, you're seeing like the strategy I'm going at is just really not working. I'm falling second, third, fourth behind. You can shift strategies as you go. How important is it to be able to sort of shift on the fly as you go? How you're thinking of playing?
Oh, definitely. I mean, in terms of the you get resources, and it's kind of like what you use the resources for. So you could be working towards basically a very, very valuable ship order that needs a certain amount of resources. Now, you can hang on to these for 2 or 3 turns. If you don't score it 1 turn, you could score it another. But you generally kind of set things in motion so that rather than just sell stuff for whatever they were worth on the market that turn, if you sold it for this, you'd actually get more points. There's also these sort of Vortex Cards, which are basically bonus points that you can add in. So, for example, if you were scoring a particular order that was worth 25 points, if you happen to have one that matches in, well, you can score a bonus 7 points for free. And also, if you put your leap on the place that gives you bonus advantages or double scores, it kind of like you've gone from 20, 30, 40, 50 points in 1 turn.
Wow.
If things all go wrong, though, there are like fail safes and catch nets. So you could always just score resources for their market value. You could always, if all else fails, there's a space in the center of the board called the Steam Lab, which is kind of bringing that steampunk idea that, yes, you've got a box of this and a crate of that and a basket full of this, and you can just mix it together to create this mad steampunk invention. Like, here are my robotic gas-powered trousers that I'm going to send to nearest tourists. Oh, I've made a psychic helmet that tells you the flavor of next day's coffee, and you just sell it for cash. So there's always a way that you can do something to get points. Because I've worked out that when I play these different styles of games, the worst thing is waiting for your turn and feeling like you've accomplished nothing. But in this game, you are always accomplished something every turn, and that just feels great.
So I want to visit really quickly the whole, you don't actually collect resources and keep them. You are collecting resources every turn, and you must spend them in order to,
yes.
I'm assuming, to complete those jobs, to complete those cards.
Yeah,
And if you can't, if for whatever reason you don't collect enough resources for anything, do you get nothing that round?
well, no, you've basically got a number of meeples to play out. So let's imagine you're playing a four-player game. You've each got five meeples.
Okay.
So you can collect three resources each turn. So let's imagine I put it on tech and ore and books. So I've also got two extra meeples. So I might basically choose to put this one on honest trading +7, or to score a bonus here that gets me an extra tech card. So no matter what this turn, I have a person on this place here, and I will definitely get these bonus points. So that's already some points already. If I had a card that I was working towards that needed those three, maybe I missed that. Maybe I got blocked off, or maybe there were too many people on ore, so I couldn't get ore this turn. Well, I could still sell the other ones I've got for, all right, well, tech's worth 9 points this turn, and I know books are worth 7 points this turn. So you can still grab a handful of books. You've still got outs in case your grand plan doesn't go to fruition, but there's always more ways to get the points in the end, so you're never that far behind.
Okay. Wow.
Okay. All right. So you mentioned there's a solo playthrough version of this that you've created. Tell us a little bit about how that will differ from the regular playthrough. What does solo do for people?
Right. Well, the idea was this all came about because as of lockdown, as you know, a lot of people were still looking for solo games. And when I was doing more and more publicity for the game, people said, "So does it have a solo mode?" And I'm like, "I'll make one for you." So I kind of looked at different ways of doing it, and the way I kind of went around it was kind of like a programmable AI. So if the board looks at this at the start of turn, so if there are these cards out available, then the game will do this in its first turn. If the player does that, then the game will do this. So it's kind of an if, comma, then situation.
Okay.
So that was pretty nerve-wracking to make sure that the game would have enough good options and all the things available that the player wouldn't just like completely outsmart it. So different people have played it and they've said kind of like, I thought I was getting ahead, and then the game just like crushed me in the last two turns. So it's good fun, and I've added a few more things in to make it a bit more challenging. Because one bit of feedback I got on was kind of like, if it's the same thing each time, then you can kind of learn your way around it. So I threw a few random elements in, and then I programmed an extra mode called the Adversary Mode, where it's not just you in the game competing; the game is actually out to get you.
Wow. And what controls the AI? How is that controlled? Is it just something in a separate manual that tells you if you do this, then do this?
Yeah, it's like a decision tree basically. So solo rules. I've kind of planned it all out. So for example, like basically when you play versus solo mode, you play it as if it's a two-player mode. So you've each got 6 meeples available. The game lasts 6 rounds, and there are certain elements in play. So, for example, the game will basically bid a random amount to go first. Each turn, you've got to kind of beat that with your cards. So if the game goes first for its first trader, if there's a valuable ship order for its first meeple, it will get that ship order to stop the player getting it. Then it will, on its next 2 or 3 meeples, it will try and fulfill that ship order. If it's blocked by the player, then it will take this other route. And if the player does that, then it will take this other route.
Oh, wow.
And then later on, season doing this, then it will try and score. There's like 3 or 4 most commonly just simple things like if you go there, you just get some points. If you go there, you double up. So it will try to kind of maximize its available points.
Now I really want to see I want to see the decision tree flowchart for all of this.
Well, the original page was kind of this massive slider diagram. It was mad.
I bet.
It fits into the rules though, which is pretty nice. But yeah, it was bonkers trying it out. And I think the first one, I tried like putting in some extra modes, like, oh, the first person to get this gets some bonus points, gets some bonus points. And the idea is the human player, in that case, would always be sneakier, and it would go for things that wouldn't logically make sense, but had a risk of getting more points, which is kind of how a human would play, really, compared to a machine. Yeah. So, but the AI kind of plays like most tactically, most logically, but it still manages to throw spanners in the works. And every round, to kind of get a bit of extra competition, there's a random meeple put out on the roll of a dice, so it kind of blocks or certain resources, so the player and the game have kind of got to react to that as well.
Right. Wow. That's very cool. That's very unique for a solo play as well, having that decision tree that you have to basically go through. That's very, very cool. You said you've been working on this for 3 years. In those 3 years that you've been working on it, what are some memorable scenarios you've had during playtesting that you've seen happen?
there have been some really wonderful and some really like heartbreaking things where, I mean, as the designer, you kind of go, right, these are the rules, let's play with it. And the player turns around and goes, so if I do this and then double it with that and add this, I've scored 60 points this turn. And I'm like, what? Oh, there was a great one. I think we had it, like, they were all the bonuses lined up, because one thing I forgot to mention is every single turn there's like a random event that comes out, because I said it's all fractal space. It's kind of changing reality. Like in this reality, there's no Steam Lab. In this reality, you can put extra people down. In this reality, there's no ore. In this reality, so with the changing effects each turn, there are some positives, some negatives. So it might restrict your trading. But there was one where all ship orders are worth a bonus plus 10 each that turn. Plus, there was another card which makes it a bonus from else. Plus, someone managed to double up on resource. So they scored like an obscene amount of points, and none of us saw it coming. And they kind of jumped from last place to first place, and we're like, "Well done!"
Wow. Well, that's great. I mean, obviously, that's because of the randomness in a lot of the elements you have in the game. Somebody in last place really could jump into first place, and that I love a game that allows that doesn't allow the first place player to just stay there. Right? There's always a chance. There's always a chance for the one who's losing to get ahead, and that I applaud you for whether it was intentional or not. I applaud you for getting it in there.
Yeah, well, the idea was it was balancing mechanics, and I spent about a year just tweaking the points values to work out the idea that no one will get too far ahead, no one will get too far behind. So no matter what you do, you would achieve. But if someone came up with a really good strategy, they could leap ahead.
Right.
And that doesn't have to be in first place or second place. And of course, the game works really, really well, depending whether you use kind of like the player versus player spaces or not. I had one of the reviews from a guy in England, some guys in England called like the Hairy Game Lords, and they were saying how they were playing with their children, and their children were like viciously sneaky and stole like half their points from them. But they were cheering them on for being so clever. It was great.
That is awesome. So, Merchants of Infinity, it is on Kickstarter, September 22nd, coming up very, very fast. Are you excited to finally? Is this your first Kickstarter? Are you excited to finally get there?
This is my second Kickstarter.
Second.
The first one was a little bit. Let's move this around. The first one was a little Victorian game called Top Hats and Treachery, and it looks a bit like this.
There it is.
So the idea is this is my first little creation. The idea is basically you're running a hotel in old London town in the Victorian age, and you've got all kind of people coming to stay with you, from kind of like princes and dukes to inventors and mad people to sort of servants, poor people, and criminal scumbags as you do. And then while you're there, you've got all kind of mad rumors that you're spreading about them. So it's kind of like a very much a storytelling game with all kind of different elements of, oh dear, your person's been arrested for madness in the street. Your person's been sort of like fallen afoul of the law. So this was the first like venture into proper gaming that I'd done, because off my own back, I designed so many other games. I think I designed about 25, 30 games before I made this one. Usually because I've got some friends in London who kind of come up and play games with me every year. So it's been a year since I've seen them, and I'm normally designing like 2 or 3 games a year. And they said, just pick one and make that one properly. And then this got turned into a Kickstarter. So it's lovely. But the idea is that I've been playing this for, 7, 8, 9, 10 years. And I've played literally 400 more games of it. And I still love playing it.
Wow. That's fantastic.
That's great.
It's so good. And then I go to conventions and people come up to me like, you made Top Hats and Treachery, didn't you? I'm like, yeah. It's like, we still like playing that game.
That is awesome. Well, September 22nd, Merchants of Infinity on Kickstarter. Andrew, thank you so much for spending time with us. Good luck, honestly, with your Kickstarter. The game sounds fantastic, and we wish you all the best on your campaign.
Thank you so much. It's been brilliant speaking to you. Merchants of Infinity is an amazing sci-fi steampunk game coming to Kickstarter Tuesday, 22nd of September. There is resource management, hand management, worker placement, all kinds of wonderful things with fantastic artwork and brilliant meeples. If you like this, please join and look for us. Also subscribe to OMG Nexus. The link is down below.